Okay. Hey, Denise Watts.
Hi,
How are you? I like the
I'm
light in the
great. How
background. You
about
got
you,
like
Greg?
your skin is glowing. Is that the light or just your normal skin?
Well, I'm gonna say it's my normal skin. We'll just leave it right there.
So
I think she has a whole setup that she's not showing
I
us.
do. You learn after a few of these.
so Denise, thanks for joining the Square Pizza Pod. It's great to have you. In
I'm
our
excited to be here.
first official video pod as well. So we promised the listening audience and I guess now the viewing audience at some point that it was going to be live. But given the current situation that we'll get to in a minute, you are the first live/recorded podcast in the history of the Square Pizza Podcast. So thank you.
Awesome.
I think we've missed an opportunity to actually incorporate Square Pizza into this.
Yeah, had some baked up. I could try to throw some in there.
Yeah, we should have delivered pizza.
That's next.
Yeah.
We're gonna have it delivered to the house while we're.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like that.
Next time.
Denise, so as you know, we try to start with some fun stuff. So talk to us about how you became famous on TikTok.
So TikTok is my hashtag COVID guilty pleasure.
Okay.
In my head.
As a result of COVID or before?
It really has kind of come to full fruition as a result of COVID. I live with a 16 and a 13-year-old, so it is important for me to stay relevant and to their lives. And so they introduced me to TikTok and I was sold.
Cool. What's your favorite part?
Go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say, what's your favorite part about the app?
So I love watching all the little line dance things that are trending right now. I'm trying to learn the Savage one.
Yeah.
Hadn't quite perfected that one yet. And just the 30-second nature of like how they keep rolling. You can really just get consumed, and I had to put it down after about a few minutes of indulging.
Yeah, that's real. Kelsey, what were you going to say?
I was going to ask what kind of content you're putting out.
Yeah.
Music videos right now.
All right.
Nothing educational yet? Or maybe how to dance? The education?
How to dance, yeah.
So for those that don't know, you're going to get into like your official background and all the great experience you've had in education for so long, but I want to start with kind of charter schools, which I think is opposite of what a lot of experience you've had. So you Google your name, a lot of things come up about your dream of like opening or running a charter at some point. Can you talk to us about that?
Yep. So it is a dream. It's not anything that's currently in my professional portfolio, but I've just always had this vision for creating a transformative experience for children that may be disenfranchised in that way, and also their families. I think there is a need and a desire to want to do that beyond the status quo of the way schools are currently run, the need to kind of break through the red tape that often exists if you do that within the constraints of a district, but also kind of leaning on lessons learned from public education, right? Because I don't believe there's necessarily a utopian educational setting. Certainly charter schools bring their own set of challenges, but just an opportunity to really be innovative and think outside the box is really where that vision comes from, and wanting to create that different experience for kids and their families.
What's the name of it going to be?
Wakanda Academy.
There you go. Coming to Charlotte, right? You better be in Charlotte.
Right.
I appreciate the nuance, because I think in this setting with the podcast and our previous guests, we know there's not a silver bullet. At least we haven't found one, anybody we've talked to yet in education, around being a silver bullet. So the nuance of whether it's a charter or a district isn't a panacea or automatic answer, right? But like understanding that I think most humans would agree we need as many quality school options as possible. And with each of them comes challenges, but like the more that there are, the more chances our kids have of having access to a great school.
Yep, I'm definitely in the pro-choice category as it relates to education. I believe that parents should have options, and whatever option works for a particular family or child, that opportunity should be extended to them. And so I've had the opportunity to kind of pick and choose where my kids are in school, and I think that should be afforded to all families.
And at least for you too, which is cool because you've seen it from so many different lenses, right? Of like good, bad, district, charter, coaching,
Yep.
consulting, and leading. And so it's a powerful statement coming from you.
Absolutely.
I think Kelsey's got the next one.
I do. So when prepping for this, I asked Greg, well, how do you know Denise? And I recently learned, as in yesterday, that you were Greg's boss a bit ago. So what was it like to be Greg's boss?
So I don't think it is possible to be Greg's boss. Greg is boss. He exemplifies the term boss in a lot of ways. Swag would be another word that would come to mind.
I think I put you up to this.
Whoa.
We don't write any of this in my end of year review. None of this is the end of year report.
I am certainly drawn to Greg's. He just has a distinct air of confidence that can really just light up a room in a lot of different ways. But I would say some of the qualities that I really appreciated in him was just this desire to take risk and to think outside the box and to push others to do the same. Just to push people outside of their comfort zone of thinking in the best interest of the community, teachers. He's a huge education teacher advocate, and for kids, and to just move people from like the status quo to the desired outcome. And so when you have that kind of ingredient in a room, when you're trying to plan and move things forward, it's just a breath of fresh air.
Didn't mean for this to turn into a snaps
You
for Greg.
Now the other ones you couldn't see the question. People were saying that. That's nice. Thank you, Denise. Back to you too. I was thinking two things. One, I think you're my last official boss, which I don't know what that says about you or me, but that's like a thing.
She gave you the tools that you needed to go out on your own.
That's right. I told you, you are the boss. You don't need a boss because you are the boss.
But to that point, the second thing I do remember one of our last conversations was like, you need to, and this was you to me, like, you need to figure out if you're going to have a traditional path, like percolate to be a principal, a superintendent, or if you're just going to go try some stuff and figure it out. And I would think going towards the innovative, figure it out route was likely because of that experience I had with you. So shout out to you as well.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
This is really cool context for me.
Back, yeah. So kind of switching gears now. I mean, obviously COVID-19 and kind of the current, pandemic is on everybody's mind, as it should be. And we could talk for hours just about that, but talk to us a little bit, one, like your current position and how that's affecting and how COVID is affecting the current position of what you're currently doing at UVA.
Yeah, so with UVA, I have the opportunity to work with district leaders from across the country who obviously are kind of in this VUCA stance right now, a time of volatility, a time of ambiguity, uncertainty, and complexity. And so what we're experiencing right now is like everybody's trying to figure it out. And this is uncharted territory. We've never in my lifetime been through anything like this. And people are trying to understand like how to retain normalcy to some regard when there is clear absence of that. But kids, we want students to continue to learn. That's the normal that people are trying to hold on to. But like, how do we do that? Right. Teachers are struggling with like, how do I get observed? Because that's tied to my licensure, my renewal. So how do we do that when people aren't actually showing up in a building? How is grading impacted? So I think everyone is just trying to figure it out. I think my role currently right now is not necessarily trying to serve as a expert on the topic, right. But what I'm trying to do right now is to just convene people who may have similar problems of practice. Yesterday, I talked to 2 principals, one in Florida, one in CMS. They're both struggling with a problem of practice. Mm-hmm. Like, why don't we jump on a Zoom together and collaboratively try to problem solve this out, right?
Collaboration win. Yes, ma'am.
Right. So just really trying to serve as a convener. I'm trying to put my hands on resources to push out to people. But most importantly, just trying to help people understand that leadership is so important during this time of uncertainty, and also extending each other and yourself grace to lead in a time like this. So it's both a combination of like, what are the technical leadership moves we need to be making and what are some of the other soft things we need to keep in mind so that we can continue to lead in a way that others can follow.
Have you seen anything really innovative that's making you hopeful over like the last 7 days since it's really taken place as people are responding to it?
I think probably one of the most interesting conversations I've had with a couple of people have been around, like, how do we maximize this time for professional development for leaders? Like, there will be a time that it kind of settles down, and you know, things will kind of go into this mode of automatic, this is what we're doing day to day. Well, teachers now have quite a bit of time on their hands, and time that they would not be willing to give over the summer, time that you don't have when the school year starts off. Right. So what does a scope and sequence look like around online professional development? Mm-hmm. How can you start maximizing tools like Zoom, not necessarily as a sit and get, but a way to really engage people in digital learning? So that's probably the most innovative thing that's kind of percolating up for me right now.
And so like over the next 6, 12, 18 months, hopefully when this is behind us and people are safe and kind of back to day to day, like what do you think, one, maybe a 2-part question, what do you think we're going to learn from this? And like, how might this change the future of education as we know it?
Yeah, I'm really hopeful, despite the uncertainty and the gloom and doom that we often see on the news every day, that we are in fact creating a new normal, right? And then once this is all said and done, if we could pause before we just jump back into the automatic day-to-day of what we used to live, we can really think about and codify what we have learned. Yep. You know, something I said as simple as yesterday, like there is no reason why a student suspended now should not be able to continue learning. That's right. We have now, I mean, at this point, we have mastered what it looks like. I wouldn't say mastered, but we're on the edge of proficiency in engaging kids in continuous learning when all they need is a computer and a hotspot, right? I think there will be a demand from the larger public, families, businesses, and communities around digital access. Like before it was a luxury, we were starting to like have some conversations about how do we expand this beyond what we have now, but we are doing it now. Like literally now, right? People have stepped up. We have put devices in kids' hands. We've put hotspots. So why would we ever go back? Right. Like, why would we ever go back? So I think there are going to be a lot of really good lessons learned, and hopefully we don't return back to normal.
Right. Yeah, I think that's right. We share a lot of that. And I think, you know, if nothing else, it further exposes the inequities in public education, particularly with a lot of communities. And so if nothing else, creates more urgency around closing those inequities to make sure, one, we don't face a crisis like this again, but two, we shouldn't need to go through a crisis like this, in our opinion, for underserved communities to all of a sudden say like, oh shit, this is important now. Like this shit was important 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, not just right now.
Absolutely.
Sorry, we're a cussing friendly podcast. At least I am. Kelsey hasn't cussed yet, but as long as it's good for kids. So speaking of kids and kind of like jumping back, tell us like what growing up was like, is like baby Denise Watts.
Oh, that's an interesting conversation. So I grew up in rural North Carolina. I grew up in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. You could probably pick that up in my voice a little bit. Predominantly white, rural community, right? I grew up around farms. I know how to prime tobacco. I know how to go outside and grow tomatoes and pluck them off the vine. I know how to can food. I learned how to drive a straight drive on a tractor.
Good. Yeah,
right. So I grew up in rural North Carolina. I grew up in poverty, but I wouldn't say I really knew that until I went to college. While resource poor in a lot of ways, my family and extended family was very value rich. And education was one of those things that was really pushed on me from the very beginning. And I was a good student, right? I was the kid that, you know, every teacher liked or knew. I was the teacher's pet. School was also in a lot of ways my escape from reality, right? Because I could go to school and maybe if I didn't have everything that I needed at home, certainly school was filling a lot of those gaps for me. So education was extremely important. I was a successful student. I was an athlete. I
What did you
would
play?
say
Sport? Basketball?
I played basketball and volleyball.
Okay.
Um,
What's your better
I
sport?
was I was the Deca queen. Like I was just one of those. I was in I was in musicals, and I was in a lot of different things. Like I was just kind of that well-rounded, I got along with every kid, the smart, nerdy kids, the athletes, even the kids at E building that were chewing tobacco. Like I could go hang out over there and I was cool with everybody.
It's true because you can remember the letter of the building, so you know that's
right. So I was just one of those kids that really just connected with everybody. I don't regret or look negatively upon any of my upbringing.
Yeah. Were you better at basketball or volleyball?
Probably basketball.
Okay.
I played volleyball in college, though.
Oh, did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Good for you. We also shared DECA in common. Kelsey, did you do DECA?
Oh, really?
I did not.
Kelsey, we got to get her. It's not too late.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
DECA teaching class.
Yes.
So that context makes sense. It's helpful from like growing up, how powerful education was to you. And then we're going to fast forward a whole bunch. You were running a little baby initiative that not many people heard about locally called Project Lift for a number of years. Tell the people what Project Lift was.
Yep. So LIFT is an acronym. It stands for Leadership and Investment for Transformation. It essentially was a philanthropic initiative that launched here in the Queen City of Charlotte, where a group of philanthropic leaders came together and wanted to challenge the status quo, support CMS in turning around its lowest performing schools, and really just see kids have a different trajectory in school and in life. And so from that came some formalized, structured, a $55 million. It was actually a little bit more than that when it was all said and done. And I plan to do education reform across 4 levers over the course of 5 years. And so it was, I got a lot of bruises in that process, but I learned a whole heck of a lot.
Right.
And I don't regret it. And I think, there's some definite lessons learned. There's some success stories I could tell about it. And it was just an exciting opportunity at the right time in my career to take that on.
So if I met you at a coffee shop and didn't have any context of Project Lift and asked if it worked, what would you say?
Depends on who you ask.
Okay.
We're asking you.
Now. You're on the spotlight.
So the answer can't really be simplified, right? When I think about the purpose of Project Lift, it really had 2 purposes. One purpose was to improve student outcomes. If that's the criteria you're using to measure success, I think I would probably say, well, it didn't work like I really wanted it to work, right? But the other purpose was to kind of fail fast, and to illuminate some best practices, but also illuminate some things that, you could learn from, so not to repeat those things in other opportunities. So I would say if you're measuring by that criteria, I would say we were extremely successful. So I definitely think it depends on who you ask and what the measurement bar is, right?
Not a silver bullet, not black or white.
Nothing in education is.
Yep. Kelsey?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how you differentiated those 2 different measurement criteria, and you guys had like some pretty lofty goals in place. I think it was the 90, 90, 90. I was away from Charlotte, I think, for the whole duration of Project Lift, so I had to educate myself in the last couple of days on the full scope of it. But what other metrics would you have put in place to really capture the full scope of what you guys were doing?
And it's so difficult to even articulate it, right? Because it was such a huge initiative that, like, we had these academic goals of 90, 90, 90, but we also had like 21 different partners, and within that 90, 90, 90 frame, we were also trying to stand up many initiatives that were like happening at real time. And oh yeah, don't forget, like I'm also part of a district. So
Right.
anything that is happening within the district or within the state of North Carolina, that's also on my plate as well. So, and I'm also responsive to a community of philanthropic and business leaders that are daily asking me, what is the return on investment? Operating in a context where like this has never been done before. So again, when I say uncharted territory, you can't Google this and find it anywhere else. And so I'm trying to do all of this literally with an extremely lean team of people, and it was hard. I would say that it was a risk-taking endeavor, but one well worth the risk, because as I look around me today, I see evidence that like people have gone on to do better than what their opportunity in Lyft was. Like they took the lessons. There is not a day that goes by almost that someone or something does not remind me of, oh, I learned this in Lyft and I was able to take this and make it that. Or I have moved from this point in my career to this point in my career because of the opportunity that I had in Lyft. So with that being said, like I am deeply grateful for that opportunity. And while me being the face of it also meant that when we didn't reach 90/90 goals, I got the criticism that went along with that. Every day I try to balance the two, right? What were the successes? And let me try to stay grounded in that, but also realizing that I'm not comfortable with where we got with student achievement. Like that is the greatest disappointment in the initiative to me. But also trying to not let that not be the thing, right? Let it be a balance of both.
And from all that, like what advice would you give to cities if they're going to do another Project Lift, if they're not going to do a Project Lift, but still want to be innovative within education? What are like your 2 or 3 takeaways that they should consider?
Yep, I would say the first thing they need to do is like to test their own inclination towards risk taking. Because again, it is a risk-taking endeavor. It's never been done before.
And by that, like if they really understand the risks in which they would need to take to drive change or educate kids?
Yep, so that inclination, the anticipation of things like the context around you is going to change. For me, the state tests change, the state standards change, 5 superintendent changes.
Right.
Like those things are going to be happening, and you've got to remain agile to those things, but also try to understand that there are going to be setbacks because of those things, and like how do you reground yourself and keep moving the work forward. I think some of the big lessons learned for me was think about how you want to define and communicate success. So I think one of the biggest mistakes I made is coming out with this 90/90/90 thing, right? Because people gravitated to that. It was easy to understand, but it was also easy for people to remember. And when I didn't hit that, then, you know, that's when the criticism came. People could not wrap their heads around progress and credit progress. All people were looking for were 90% of your kids on grade level. So those goals were probably way too ambitious.
Right.
B, I should have thought of other ways to define how I would actually measure success. And then how I also communicate that success to others. Because I think you have to be cognizant of both. There's an internal group of people that you're trying to motivate and communicate to, but there's also a larger community when you're doing something like Lyft, and the spotlight is on you. So balancing aspiration with being real is also important.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing, man. I know with any leader, 1, doing something innovative is maybe always tough, and 2, whether it goes well or not, just reflecting on it and sharing like highs and lows. So I appreciate you doing that. And I think from my perspective, I'm a little biased because you were my boss, which we covered earlier, and I worked for you. And then second, I taught at the school at West Charlotte before Project Lift, but obviously have and still have strong feelings and emotions tied to that. But I think if nothing else, like for me and our perspective, I hope we don't lose Charlotte's ability or nationwide ability to like really transform education. because I think, right, if nothing else, a lot of people, whether they're in education or not, talk about the need to innovate, and we can define what innovate looks like. But one, that's important, but two, in very few other markets would you try one thing once and say it doesn't work, it's not for it, and like throw everything out right away. And when you talk to some foundations, even nationally, not about Lyft, but just other work, it sometimes feels like education gets a bad rap because one thing didn't work after trying to reverse 400 years of oppression or slavery, where a larger corporation would maybe want to innovate quickly, didn't work, scrap it, but like keep going. So like, how do we kind of build that muscle in education for funders, for principals, for school superintendents to just be willing to keep innovative and like fail, but keep going and get better until we get there?
And when people say Project Lift didn't work, I would say if you look at it in totality, maybe people could say that.
Yeah.
I still grapple with that. But did we launch an initiative called Opportunity Culture that was first in the nation, that is now spread across 200 districts across the country? Yes, that was successful. Did we, when I think about all the device deployment that's happening right now and hotspot deployment in CMS, we're probably leading the country in that regard. That all started because Lyft started that.
Okay. Yep.
And was it success? Absolutely perfect and successful? Absolutely no. But by the time we passed the ball to CMS, they didn't have to repeat the mistakes that I had already made. They were ready to take the ball from the 20-yard line, all the way down from the touchdown. So
when to zoom in on that, I think that's important, is that at least within Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, Lyft was the first 9 schools to roll out the one-to-one, which then after it worked fairly well, as you said, the remaining 130 some schools adapted that model, right? So you talk about scale and success, like that's an important thing to talk about.
Right, absolutely. Some of the ways we do professional development, it started in Lyft. It is now replicated across every school in the district.
Yep.
So it's just obvious to me that, like, when we talk about things like a Lyft or any huge endeavor, we have to be careful not to wrap it all up in one, and really to dissect and really illuminate what those lessons learned were before we just call it a success or not a success. It's too simplified if you think about it that way.
Nuanced. Yeah, nuance is always the theme. Kelsey, do you have something?
I mean, you already started kind of answering the question that I was going to ask. And I mean, like, Project Lift as a true project is over, but like so many little pieces kind of live on. And what are you kind of most proud of that's living on?
Oh, wow. There is a list of things, but definitely proud of the work we did with Opportunity Culture. That was probably one of the most risky things that we have done, but to see that now being replicated in so many places across the country is just personally and professionally satisfying. I would also say kind of the second thing, when I look at the number of people that were promoted into principalships, district level opportunities, and even, people who have even left education but are now leading their own organizations like Greg, or leading in a nonprofit, like that brings me a sense of pride, because I know not only did we have an opportunity to impact kids when I had those people, but now they're going on and they're expanding their impact at a much broader level. So to me, when I think about the legacy of Lyft, the legacy lives on in the Gregs and the Tamisha Barnes-Jones and, all the different people that have now gone on and they're making a bigger impact in their communities, not only in Charlotte, but other places around the country. So I'm very proud of that.
And Tamisha Barnes-Jones was the principal at West Charlotte and got a number of awards and really made some remarkable gains under your leadership and her leadership as well, right?
Yeah.
So within like within our work, but also within this podcast too, like, we branded it and think deeply about kind of like the future of education, innovation, equity is what we think, because those 3 things are really important together. And equity, we think a lot about racial equity, gender equity, and a few other ways in which people define equity. And think about it personally as like a white dude in the space, often working in neighborhoods with people that may not look like me from the outside, but I would like to think maybe on the inside we're related in some human way. And so always thinking about that, what that means for our organization, what that means for our work, or what that means maybe for me as a white dude in leadership in that way. So if you're comfortable, tell us kind of like how race and gender has played a part, if it's played a part in your role and your professional experience.
Yeah. Um, I think saying it's a daily part of my professional and personal experience probably is an understatement. So much so, like it's so engulfing that oftentimes I'm living in it and I don't even know that I'm living in it, right? I'm not even always cognizant of the micro aggressions, micro moments where it comes into play. And in some ways, and I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday about this. Like I have been conditioned to learn how to play the game, right? That's how I've been able to navigate to the success that I've navigated to in my career. So, I've had the opportunity to be shoulder to shoulder with people that most people in my position, most African American women would not have that opportunity. So I'm so in it that I don't see it oftentimes, and so I would just say that I'm learning too. Like this term equity and race, they're almost they're just bubbling up at a time right now that I find are very interesting, and I think we all have to be thoughtful about it, continuously learning about it. And it just impacts everything we do. I wish it didn't, but it does.
Yeah. Is there anything, like, have you been through powerful experiences, like professional developments, or like have you given advice to others that have changed? Like, I guess, what do you want people to know from your perspective, one as a leader, but then as an African-American female leading this work as well, as it comes to race and equity? Like, what should the larger population know to either make sure this isn't, continue to be a hurdle moving forward, or that kind of racist and systemic systems are broken?
Yep. I would say the first thing I'd want people to know and understand is to remain in a learning stance, right? To also be cognizant of biases. We all have them.
Yep.
And to constantly be questioning where those biases come from, if they're truly accurate, and then how do you navigate them moving forward? I just think a willingness to sit down with someone who is different from you, and different could be race, gender, religion, sexuality. It really expands so far beyond like the color of people's skin, right? Economic.
Yep.
And just be willing to learn and understand other people's perspectives is just a great starting place.
Yep. That's great. And maybe build off it like in a safe environment too, right? Where if it's professionally or not, but just coming to a common understanding with the human across from you that, like, I'm going to say some things in a kind and way that I think is kind, but like maybe extend grace, as you said too, assuming nobody has any ill intent behind them. But I think you find sometimes those things are just even hard to say the words and like ask a question, because like, what if I say something crazy, or what if somebody hears me or misinterprets what I'm trying to say, and then like you're losing trust and respect and that sort of stuff. So that safe space, I think we found, has been really important for us.
Yep, I agree.
And I appreciate what you said about these words kind of bubbling up. Like, I think a lot about this. In 2008, I was like one of the only white male teachers at West Charlotte. Like, when you're doing PD, it's like scope and sequence, mastery, attendance. Like, nobody talked to me about white privilege. Nobody talked to me about race or equity. And this was 2008, which I don't think seems that long ago. And so to see how much the conversation, I think, has evolved has been great. But then at the same time, like, where the hell was this 10 years ago or 12 years ago, however long it was?
I agree.
So it's been crazy. So I think transitioning a little bit to some rapid fire, because you're a busy woman, have to play with your sweet dog Nala, and probably your family too. So the most innovative thing in public education you're seeing today, what is it?
Oh, wow. The most innovative thing. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't just say like the digital learning advancements that we are making in real time has been absolutely astonishing to me. I would be remiss if I did not lift up the opportunity for public-private or public charter collaboration that you did with Ashley Park and Movement.
I
as
didn't tell her to say that. I didn't tell her to say that.
no, you did not, as a real
This was
opportunity
all rigged.
for innovation. I think opportunities for public-private partnership, obviously, with Lyft, present some new and interesting opportunities as well for people. I mean, there are many things. I think we have to define, first of all, what innovation is, because innovation in one district and one context is totally different from innovation somewhere else. And so I could probably list 1,000 things that, you know, people might agree with or disagree. It just depends on context.
Yeah. I appreciate the nod. I think to build off the safe kind of space kind of pillar and how important that is, like as the work with Ashley Park and moving around families has evolved, I think most of us know this to be true in this space, but like then more people, if you count that a safe space, there's been more district people reaching out locally and across the country, more charter people reaching out locally and across the country. It's like, you know, I've always wanted to do this, but like, I'm afraid, nobody's done it before. How do I do it? What happens if I do it? And I think that's just amplifying. It's not because of us, but it's just amplifying the conversations, the quality of instruction, the quality of like how we're talking to families. And that's spreading in like a positive virus way if we can. But I think because that safe space is important.
Yep, absolutely.
One actionable thing you think our audience should do to improve public education?
So I'll go up to the policy level. If you had asked me 15 years ago, you know, I came from the mindset that if you just had a great teacher and a great principal, you were going to have a great school. I still believe that, but I think I have learned that there's room for other things. And so I think a very important thing for people to do is to like stay attuned to what's happening at the political level. The people that we put in offices create budgets and make extremely important decisions that impact all the way down to the classroom, all the way down to your child. And so we are in a very political hotbed right now with election 2020 coming up. We also elect local leaders that have a significant impact on how schools operate. So I think, you know, everybody needs to be thinking about not only, you know, how can I go volunteer and read to a kid at school? That's great. That's excellent. We need all of that.
Yep.
Or how can I write a check that will support the next lift or the next big initiative? Extremely important. We know we need that. But if we don't have the change and flexibility we need at the political level, then some of that stuff won't truly get the traction that it needs to be successful. So I'll just lift it up to there. It's probably an unconventional response and maybe a response that folks aren't willing or able to hear right now.
Right.
But I can tell you from living it, it's real.
Yeah, I think that's great. And certainly not, again, like hearkening back to the dark days of 2008 when I was coming into this world, but like, don't think you know it, but you don't really understand the intricate details of what the Department of Public Education or Public Instruction in North Carolina is doing, how that affects Mecklenburg County, just how the money passes through, and then locally every year, how a school district is advocating for more money from the county, and the county is saying, what are you doing with last year's money? Like the tension that happens just to actually get to kids and teachers with the daily instruction, right? It's like, it's so hard to know.
It goes all the way from who's on the school board, who's on the county commission, who's working at the state level in politics, all the way up to the national level. And we all have the ability to vote. If you are 18 years of age or older, you have the opportunity to impact decision-making at every single one of those levels. And I think people sometimes overlook that, and they don't think, like, how is this person that I'm checking the box for really going to make a decision that's going to impact my kid? Well, they do.
That's right.
And they make real decisions.
That's right.
Should we make a map of influence? I'm just had like a light bulb moment. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I can see a infographic on how that one vote to whoever
it means
maps down to your child.
Yeah.
Next term co-problem.
Absolutely. If every parent could think about that when they are checking those boxes, I think it brings a new level of understanding to how a vote can have an impact on your day-to-day life and the future of your child.
And I would build off that, if you let me, and say the future of humanity, because I think you know, like, your child is right taking care of your house, but I think, as we've seen, if not, inequities will grow, and I don't have to vote anymore because my kids aren't in the school system anymore, so those other kids can kick rocks and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so as always, the most important question of the podcast: what does Square Pizza remind you of?
4th grade cafeteria, Jonesville Elementary School, home of the Blues.
There you go.
Yes.
So what about it? Tell us more.
It was like the best pizza ever. 4th grade,
the
going
best.
to lunch, and you get that little square pizza that fits on the blocked plate.
Yep.
It didn't matter what the sides were.
It's corn.
Corn
was the side.
The chocolate milk and the pizza, that was everything right there.
So we're taking an informal poll too, because we found some states, this is true, we found out some states in public schools didn't serve square pizza. So we think it's like becoming a regional, like Howard Fuller said he didn't have square pizza in Wisconsin growing up.
Holy
or
smokes.
New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh, I was about to say that's a disgrace because Wisconsin and the cheese.
Oh, the cheese spot, yeah. But then he said he didn't like cheese either. Maybe he grew something to it. So it's good to know you had the pleasure of enjoying square pizza.
Absolutely.
Did it come on a Friday for you guys?
I can't remember the day it was, but I'm sure it was the best day of the week. I'm positive it was.
Kelsey, anything we missed before we let Ms. Watts jump?
Yeah. How do we follow you on TikTok?
I
Sorry, do you want people to follow you on TikTok? Are we trying to grow that following?
I just figured out how this week to put my picture on there. I'm not real sure. I need to get a tutorial on that. I don't even know what my name is. My son set it up for me. So I have to get back to you on that one.
All right. So we're not promoting the TikTok follow at this point.
Not quite. I don't know if I'm ready yet.
Go. Perfect skills. Denise Watts, thank you for everything. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being my boss a long time ago. And thanks for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.